Hey y'all, it's Heel Heat time.
Hi everybody and welcome to Heel Heat. My name is George Coles and this is our WWE show for the week. Let's jump right in with the so-so segments of the night. Basically, they weren't good, they weren't bad, they were just there. First up is the opening segment with Stephanie McMahon and Vicky Guerrero threatening to fire her. But she gives her the opportunity that if she can win her match, Vicky can win her match later in the night, she gets to keep her job. The match is against Stephanie McMahon. I understand why they're doing this, why they're writing Vicky off the air, but I'm just not a fan of these opening segments like this. They need to switch it up, give me something different. Other than that, it was okay. Next up, we have the second thing in our so-so portion, Damien Sandow as Abraham Lincoln versus Big E. I like Big E, I really do. This has nothing to do with him and him winning and what happened with Rusev after the match. This has everything to do with the fact that I'm dumbfounded that a wrestler as talented as Damien Sandow is getting saddled with such a shitty gimmick as that he's doing these little impressions every town they go into. I just don't understand it. I don't know who he's pissed off or why he's pissed them off, but I just don't get it. I don't at all. I liked Big E winning, don't get me wrong, I like Big E. I liked what Rusev and Big E did after the match, but it gets on here because I'm just dumbfounded with what they're doing with Damien Sandow, who less than a year ago was one of the hottest wrestlers in the company, and since then they've continued to bury him further and further down the card. Next up, we're going to go into our bad portion tonight, stuff I didn't like. Basically just one thing I didn't really like, I disliked altogether, and that was the Rusev and DC promo. I thought it was stupid, I thought it was very 80s, very, I don't know, just, it doesn't resonate with me. The whole Rusev ugly Russian doesn't work in an era where the communists ain't our big enemy. Our big enemies are terrorists. The world's more complicated than it was back when USA versus Russia was the big rivalry. It's a more complex world there, and I'm sure, I don't know, just to me, I just don't get it. I don't like the promos. There's a couple things that they've been doing with Rusev that I've liked. For the most part, I've not liked what they're done with him. But coming off of that, we're going to go into our question of the week from last week. Our question of the week, and the question of the week last week was, what is your favorite wrestling video game? Now we had, as you can see, some great answers from our friends. First is from our friend at AUP116 on Twitter. Great tough question, by the way, but I'll just list my faves. WCW NWO Revenge, SmackDown 2, SmackDown Shut Your Mouth, and HCTP. Here Comes the Pain. There you go. Both had best season mode. WrestleMania 2000, Raw 2, and SmackDown vs. Raw 2006 and 7, and SmackDown vs. Raw 2010-11. Those were the ones I enjoyed the most, and WCW Backstage Assault. Backstage Assault was actually a very fun game. It's a kind of overrated come in the dying era of WCW. It was more of a fighting game than a wrestling game, kind of in the since the old WWF arcade game that they made for Genesis and Nintendo or Super Nintendo. But good game. I enjoyed Backstage Assault as well. Next up from our friend Benjamin Me. Hey Heel Heat, for this week's question of the week, I was absolutely addicted to WWF SmackDown 2 on PlayStation 1. That game was released around the same time I discovered wrestling, and I remember Mankind's character in the game used to scare me. I also love SmackDown Here Comes the Pain, mostly because I like to edit the Big Show's moveset, so his finisher was a 5-star frog splash or the shooting star press. That's just awesome and funny. It's kind of like I like to do it, and I've seen other people put it on YouTube as well. I'll go in and I'll edit the Undertaker to where he has one of the ladies' entrances or someone like Kane and give them, one of the diva entrances, and it cracks me up, so I can understand where you're coming from with that. Next up's our friend Yellow Lion 3250. My favorite wrestling video game was Fire Pro Wrestling R. It was smooth and had every important wrestler from each company out then. All you had to do was change their names, but a close second is the arcade game WWF WrestleFest. It was the first wrestling game I ever played and ate a lot of my quarters. Mine too. I used to play it at a 7-Eleven. It was nearby the house I grew up in. I just wanted to throw this out here when I read this because this reminded me of this. On the tag team mode, my tag team was Mr. Perfect and Sergeant Slaughter. I don't know how I came to that, but I stumbled upon them being pretty much unstoppable, even against the Legion of Doom in the game. I wanted to know if you watch this Yellow Lion 3250, what was your team? Who'd you play with in that game? That's just a side question for me and you. That was my team. Sergeant Slaughter and Mr. Perfect. Somehow they were unstoppable. And last but not least, our friend Dizzle Pup. Hey George. Wow, where do I start with this week's question of the week? My 3 worst would be Nitro, Thunder, and Mayhem on the PS1. Yeah, pretty bad games. Just dog shit games. However, looking back at the rants for the wrestlers on YouTube, it is hilarious. My guilty pleasure favorite would either be Warzone or Attitude. Just heaps of characters and replay value. Also like WCW NWO Revenge on Nintendo 64. I'm excited that 2K have the rights now. Their NBA games are great, and I think they could do great things for the series. I absolutely agree with the 2K portion. I usually get the NBA 2K series. When the football was out, I used to get the football NFL 2K series as well. They do a fantastic job with the NBA series. It's up there with one of the best sporting games of the year, along with MLB The Show. Madden, of course, always slides in there. So I'm excited as well. This year's version will be the first one that they've actually had from beginning to the end, from cradle to the grave, basically. So I can see the excitement. Now, going on to the question, my answer, it was a Nintendo 64 game, and it was basically the WCW NWO Revenge, but the Japanese version was called Virtual Pro Wrestling. And much like was mentioned with the Fire Pro Wrestling, this had basically everybody you could want. There were WWF wrestlers on there, there were WCW wrestlers, every major promotion in Japan, a couple ECW guys that wrestled in Japan as well. Mostly cater for the Japan. Also some legends like Rico Dozen. I want to say, I forget the Gracie, but the first Gracie, his name is skipping my brain right now. Not Royce Gracie, but his grandfather. And other legends on there like Muhammad Ali. It was... Oh, and they also had pride fighting wrestlers in there as well, like Boss Root and stuff of that nature. Again, like you said, with Fire Pro, all you had to do was change the names. A lot of the guys, you could just look at them and see who they were and change their name to that. Some of them, you had to go in. And I remember there was a website at the time that basically gave you the English interpretations of the names so you could do it easily. You could edit the wrestlers. This was one of the first ones I remember you could edit the wrestlers, and the editing was like very minimal. However, I had so much fun with that game. It was the same engine that No Mercy used for WWE, that WCW NWO Revenge used. I think it's the best wrestling engine they've ever put out. I think even to this day, I enjoy playing those games. If you were to say to me, let's play 2K14 WWE, or play this, or NWO Revenge, or No Mercy, or WrestleMania 2000, all basically the same engine, I'm going to pick one of those games that came out in the Nintendo 64 era just because they were so much more fun for me. But awesome answers, everybody. I thought a lot of those games were great and had fun. They were just awesome to play. And that's why I wanted to bring that up, because a lot of us have really fond memories of wrestling video games. Now, coming off of that, speaking of fond memories, we seen this week was a little bit centered around Vicky Guerrero, and I don't want to jump ahead too far, but being as this is, I'll spoil it right now if you didn't see the show, since this was Vicky's last night there, and she came out with Eddie's music and everything, what is your favorite Eddie Guerrero memory? Let us know what you think. Hit us up on Facebook, hit us up on Twitter, put it down where? Down there in the comments. And also hit like and share while you're going at it. But anyway, we're going to go back right into the show, into the good portions of the night. First up, we had Jimmy Uso versus Luke Harper. Harper picks up the win, which leads us to having Jey Uso calling out Eric Rowan. I almost call him Roman Rowan, but Eric Rowan. Jey picks up the win here. I thought this was great. I liked that the Wyatt family won afterwards. The only thing I didn't like was the shitty organ grinder version of Whole World in His Hands. They need to dump that and get away from that as quickly as possible. Get that dumpster fire away from them. That sucked. Keep them with the Wyatt family theme. The Wyatt family theme is fucking amazing. The shitty organ grinder version of Whole World in His Hands is piece of shit. This was but the two matches were a great precursor to Money in the Bank this weekend and their tag team championship match. I think it's going to be awesome. I think it's going to be one of the showstoppers, and hopefully it's one of the, it's one of the things where we get to see Rowan and Harper as their own thing, kind of separate from Bray Wyatt. Because I think they both could be stars on their own as well. But it should be a great match either way. Next up, we have another precursor for the pay-per-view. Alicia Fox versus Naomi. Winner would be the #1 contender for Paige's Divas Championship. We had Paige and Cameron on commentary. Paige was okay. Cameron was annoying. Naomi picked up the win over Alicia. I figured she would. Alicia's kind of had her opportunities. I'm actually looking forward to very much Naomi versus Paige. I think it's going to be a really good match. It's going to be one of the great Divas matches. I like the matchup. I think their styles work well together, and I think it's going to be a great match to have on the pay-per-view. Get us back interested in the Divas division. We're starting to see more and more slowly the Divas division is building respectability and getting away from the silly crap like the stupid, musical chairs or diva dance-offs and all that stupid crap. And we're getting back to where the Divas are actually wrestling. Now next up we have Bo Dallas versus Titus O'Neil. Bo picks up a win. It makes everybody a Bo-liever, except for Titus. He goes to say some inspirational stuff to Titus after the match. Titus smacks out the microphone. And this is why Bo Dallas, and this character, which a lot of people think is kind of hokey and goofy, but he buys into it 100%, and that's why it's working, because he picks up the microphone and goes, "Oops, I must have Butterfingers. It slipped out of my hands." That reaction right there is what that character is. He's so perfectly fit for the character, and the character is such a revelation on how well it's being done. Kudos to Bo. I'm a Bo-liever. I hope you're a Bo-liever too, because I think it's awesome. I think what he's doing is great, and I think he's fully fleshed out a character that fits his personality so perfectly. Now next up we had Triple H and Seth Rollins come out to the ring to announce the other contenders in the second Money in the Bank ladder match, the traditional one. We get Kofi Kingston added, Jack Swagger, Dolph Ziggler, Rob Van Dam, and Bad News Barrett, which leads us into a match with Rob Van Dam versus Seth Rollins, which gets broken up when Dean Ambrose hits the ring and attacks Seth Rollins. Afterwards, the aftermath is Seth Rollins talks Triple H into putting Ambrose into the ladder match. Again, another match that is set up to sell the pay-per-view. Who would have thought? A week from the pay-per-view, you give us matches that build the pay-per-view, build interest? It's a formula that works, people. People are going to go and either pay their cable or satellite provider or buy the WWE Network to watch the pay-per-view. You give us a reason to, we're going to watch it. And the build-up, I think the build-up for it has been awesome. Especially this week's show. Next up, we had two competitors from said match. Bad News Barrett versus Dolph Ziggler in an Intercontinental title match. Barrett picks up the win. Ziggler looks great. Like I said, these guys are two credible. They show why these guys are both capable of becoming the winner in the Money in the Bank match. Another preview for the pay-per-view. Another reason. This is a go-home pay-per-view, and they're hitting it home for us. And I enjoy what they're doing and how they're building towards it. Next up, we had the career on the line. Vicky Guerrero versus Stephanie McMahon. Already let the cat out of the bag. Stephanie won after she got help from Rosa Mendez, Layla, and Alicia Fox. Basically, there was a pool of what looked like chocolate pudding, and you won the match by throwing your opponent into the pudding. Vicky throws Rosa, Layla, and Alicia all in the pudding, start celebrating, and Stephanie throws her in, which at this point Vicky gets out and throws Stephanie in. Now normally I would crap all over these segments. I would shit on them. I hate it from the beginning to the end. Here's why I liked it. First, there have been rumblings and rumors that Vicky Guerrero would be done soon with the WWE and moving on to other ventures. Now, it's no secret that Vicky Guerrero was hired to the WWE as a favor to the family to keep some income coming in because she was a stay-at-home mom until her husband Eddie passed away. Vince McMahon, as a favor, hired her, said, you got a job as long as you want a job. Now Vicky's decided to move on and do other business ventures, which is great for her life. She had an awesome send-off, in my opinion, and here's why. She came out with her husband's music, the Lie, the Cheat, the Steal, that great Eddie Guerrero song that everybody instantly thinks of him. She got the comeuppance on Stephanie, even with losing. She threw Stephanie into the pudding. She did the Eddie Guerrero, the shake that he used to do with his chest. She did it on the way out. Vicky Guerrero leaving was more popular than she ever was there. And if you really think about it, over the past 8-10 years or whatever it's been that she's been there, 8 years or so, she's been one of the most over heels they had. No one's got the heat that Vicky Guerrero has. A lot of it's, because she annoyed people, but that was her role, to annoy people. So Vicky Guerrero, one of the best on-screen general managers they've had, and I don't like those roles, but getting a proper send-off, I thought this was great. I liked what they did for her. I think it was nice and special for a lady that's done a lot, and her family's done a lot for wrestling. Next up, we had another match with participants for the Money in the Bank match. Jack Swagger versus Kofi Kingston. Again, much like Ziggler versus Barrett, the two guys got to show off why they're in the match, why they're potential threats to win the match, and just their talents altogether. Swagger picks up the win after a very hard-fought match. We get to see Swagger kind of relevant again, kind of been languishing after him and Cesaro broke up. Kofi, you know how I feel about him. I think he's someone that can be pushed to main event level. Again, we're seeing why basically anybody in that ladder match could be the winner of the match. Which leads us to the last match, which showcases everybody in the world title ladder match. We have Sheamus, John Cena, and Roman Reigns versus Cesaro, Alberto Del Rio, Randy Orton, and Bray Wyatt. A decent match, not bad altogether. I thought it was a good way to end the show, good way to show us everybody that was going to be in the main event. Highlight Roman Reigns as being a guy to look out for in this. After the match, King comes down and pretty much announces that he's going to be in the match. So we added an 8th character, or an 8th opponent for the match. Just a great... This is the kind of match you want to have going into a pay-per-view. You don't want to have a 5-star classic, then you have no reason to buy the pay-per-view. You want to have a match that sets up the 5-star classic at the pay-per-view, in my opinion. But basically, let's get right into our rating system for the week. Now, if you've seen the show before, or if you haven't, we have a 1 to 5 scale. 1 is a Great Khali, 2 is a Santino Marella, 3 is a Cody Rhodes, 4 is a Cesaro, 5 is a Daniel Bryan. I'm giving the show a 5 of Daniel Bryan. I thoroughly enjoyed it. It sold me on Money in the Bank. I'm excited on watching the pay-per-view. I'm intrigued on who's going to win the 2 ladder matches. I think the matches they have set up for the pay-per-view are looking astounding. I think it looks great. I think every match they've announced so far has rhyme, has reason, has a purpose to be on the card. I enjoy it. I think they did an excellent job on a go-home show for a pay-per-view. This is what they should do every month on the week of the pay-per-view. They should have a show much like this that builds up your interest and your intrigue for the matches coming up. But basically, that's all I have to say about that. My name is George Coles, and this has been another episode of Heel Heat.